here's Michael Smerconish.
Tell me what these have in common. The Washington football team, Ben's Original, KFC, AirTran, now Facebook. All rebranding, right? Americus Reed is the Whitney M. Young Jr. Professor of Marketing at the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania. His primary area of research and consulting, brand equity and identity loyalty. He's written a great piece for Smerconish.com. It's in all of my social media right now. Professor Reed, thank you so much for your time. What is brand equity and identity loyalty?
Well, brand equity is the value of when you create a product, service, organization, you are trying to make connections with people, Michael. And so the equity that you create is essentially the asset. So in other words, when you put the brand out there, the brand can be a gravitational connection to consumers, and they will connect in ways that allow them to want to pay more for the stuff that you make, to want to affiliate with the stuff that you make, to want to really create a community around the stuff that you make. And so that's where the equity piece comes into it. And then the loyalty piece really comes when those products, brand, services, or organizations, Michael, create a connection such that there's an element of self-expression. In other words, those products, those brands, they transcend what they do into a realm of reflecting something about who you are.
Has this thinking always been around us, or has it gained resonance in, say, the last 25 or 30 years?
I think it's an incredible point. It's actually exactly that instance, Michael. It's when you think about brand, the very first word brand was used when you used to put the hot iron on the cattle to be able to identify these cattle come from different areas, et cetera. That was brand. And so that's the word kind of meant exactly putting a marker on something so you could identify it. Fast forward to now, it's really an evolution of thinking around that. What you're really trying to do with a brand, Michael, is to create a meaning system that represents this is who I am, this is what I do, this is why I do it. And you create an entire set of core values around your product, your service, your organization, so that consumers can make the decision as to whether or not they want to affiliate with what you do in service of helping them express something about who they are.
About 20 years ago, I joined a law firm. It was called Beasley, Casey, Colleran, Erbstein, Thistle, and Klein. When I was in law school at Penn and I was clerking for a law firm, it was called Dilworth, Paxson, Kalish, and Kaufman. Now, the former is simply called the Beasley Firm, and the latter is simply called Dilworth. It seems like in the private sector, there's been this heavy emphasis on sum it up in one name or one term.
That's 100% correct. I think consumers more generally, Michael, there's just incredibly short attention spans. So the challenge with breaking through the clutter in the day-to-day messages that everyone is bombarded with is to keep that message very simple and precise and very memorable, but such that one can bring it to mind later on and think about what might be an opportunity to buy something to achieve a particular goal when the time is right.
So as this applies to Facebook, by the way, Facebook, a pretty cool name, maybe more recently some negative connotation, but as a branding proposition, does that pass your smell test?
100%. I mean, the Facebook analysis, Michael, is to say that we create connection with people, right? And so what we're trying to do is be a conduit where people can get together with like-minded views and build a kind of community around their thoughts and ideals and beliefs. And so the original idea was to create this Facebook paradigm that allowed to do that. And later on, it would change into other certain issues where you mentioned earlier where there was negative backlash around, well, should Facebook just allow anything to be said in these communities? And where are the parallels of free speech around these parameters? And you're a guru on this. You understand this way better than I'm just a marketing guy. But understanding that Facebook now is trying to recreate itself, reimagine itself, rebrand itself is a word you just used, to try to create an opportunity to link with a bunch of new different customers.
But do we really care what their parent is called? And I'm kind of buried the lead here. Meta is now going to be the parent of Facebook, I guess in the same way that Alphabet is the parent of Google. Do consumers care what the parent name is?
Well, they care in the sense that they need to be able to identify that particular company. I think you're making a great point, which is I think the underlying question you're asking here is, will behavior change in terms of how consumers react to Facebook as a function of this new parent company name? And the answer to that's probably not with respect to consumers. But the bigger question, Michael, is the opportunity to create a new signal for other constituencies like investors and other parts of the ecosystem where Facebook is trying to leave all this negativity behind. And the way that it can do this is to create a new conversation around this metaverse. And we're now Meta as a parent company. And once people start talking about that a lot, Michael, then all of the other conversations around Cambridge Analytica and a whistleblower and all of these other kinds of things get pushed into the background. And so it's a kind of ingenious way to kind of change the conversation to propel Facebook in a new direction where it's trying to go.
If Mark Zuckerberg had come to you at Wharton and had said, Professor Reed, can I run this by you a couple of months ago? We're thinking of making this move. What would have been your counsel?
That's a great question, Michael. I would have told him the move is correct, number one. And I think we are going in the direction of three-dimensional connection, which is what the metaverse essentially is, the ability to take on an immersive identity in a completely textured new world. And there's going to be a lot of interactions, both professional and in business interactions and private and leisurely interactions that are going to happen in that world. So that makes sense. But the big advice, and I'd have to look him in the eyes, Michael, and give him some tough love. And that would be to say, Mr. Zuckerberg, I think you should recede back from being the public face of this entire thing with respect to Facebook and Meta. Because quite honestly, sir, you might be a mad scientist who's great at sort of engineering all of this stuff, but you're not the warmest, charismatic, visionary leader that could be put out there to sort of represent this metaverse new reality. And so, you just want to stick to what you're doing. So I would say the direction was right, but I would pull back and not put myself out there to just read scripts in front of teleprompters and think that consumers are suddenly going to see me as differently as the leader of Facebook, but also the thought leader with this new metaverse world.
Do you feel the same way about Elon Musk?
That's a great question. I feel the exact opposite about Elon Musk.
Really?
Because
why?
I think Elon Musk has built a kind of cult following that's incredibly, people are so polarized around. You either love him or you hate him. There's
Right.
no in between. And so I think he's made the decision, like, I'm not really selling electric cars. I'm selling part of my vision. And my vision, this futurist sort of, I want to see the world 100 years from now, is part of what you're buying when you buy the Tesla. And by the way, Tesla's never paid a dime to advertise. So you've never seen a Tesla advertisement. It's all word of mouth, the cult of personality through Elon Musk. And he's been able to create a brand of himself that people resonate with. The people who are super loyal to Elon Musk are incredibly loyal in ways that really transcend other sorts of company leaders.
But you don't get that same vibe from Facebook. What is it, 3.6 billion around the globe? You don't think that they engender passion supportive of Mark Zuckerberg in the way that I happen to drive one of those cars? And yeah, I think the world of Musk. I love having him doing what he's doing.
I think that's 100% correct, Michael. And I think what's interesting here is people get confused about Facebook because they say, well, 3.6 billion users, just as you mentioned, wow, they must be loyal. No, not really. Actually, what's with respect to Facebook is you're sort of stuck in the ecosystem. You've got 5, 7, 8, 10, 15 years of your life that's on this platform now. And it's not entirely easy just to pull out and say, well, I'm going to do something else.
Right.
So loyalty in this case is more what I would call inertia. So Facebook has the ability to keep a lot of people around because you're just kind of stuck in that and you don't really have any other alternatives. And so what I think is interesting is this metaverse now is going to create an opportunity to bring in a whole bunch of new, perhaps even younger consumers who may not have any sort of negativity with respect to the past problems and issues of Facebook, but have the opportunity to connect in that way. So Facebook is in a pretty good position, but in no way would I say are the people, the users of active daily users of Facebook loyal to Mark Zuckerberg in the same way that the Tesla drivers are loyal to Elon Musk.
Totally get it. By the way, you wrote the following. So here is where the Meta rebrand gets interesting. Zuckerberg wants to be the face of a new class of products represented by the metaverse, which is essentially a fully immersive and multi-dimensional connected world. If Facebook is a two-dimensional connection channel, Meta will be that on steroids. It will be where virtual and augmented reality products will emerge and allow users to create, live, communicate, and commiserate in a fully immersive environment. This will certainly attract the digital natives whose first three words may have been mommy, daddy, and iPad. What's all that mean?
Well, it means, Michael, that this is where the new world is headed, right? So the idea that you can now create who you are, you can create an avatar out of whole cloth and be this completely customized person in this fully immersive world. I mean, we were already leaning toward that, where Facebook was this platform to sort of post your curated identity, your aspirational self, and let the world see how awesome your life is. But now you can take that and put it on steroids in the immersive world. You're going to have the exact same kinds of issues that come up with respect to folks getting together with certain ideas in this fully three-dimensional immersive world. And it opens up the possibility, the can of worms, that those same free speech issues are going to live and breathe in this three-dimensional augmented reality, virtual reality world. And who's going to be in that world? It's going to be these younger consumers who are the digital natives. I'm a digital immigrant, so I'm still trying to figure out what's this TikTok thing and how do you get on Instagram and how you do all this stuff. But the digital natives are going to be seamlessly sort of growing into that world where they're automatically born out of the womb, swiping left and right, and they understand all of these things, and they're going to be set up, Michael, to just sort of live like in that universe, to sort of wake. It's like the movie The Matrix. It's like you just wake up in this world, and you're in that world if you're that type of younger consumer who's grown up with all of this technology.
Professor Reed, a practical question, if I may, given that your primary research and consulting areas are in brand equity and identity loyalty. How does something like this come to pass? In other words, I take it they realize we've got a brand problem. We better come up with a solution. And what? They went out in search of names. They focus grouped them. Like, what do you think? You probably get these phone calls from companies that are trying to do exactly this.
This 100% correct. Business intelligence, like this wasn't willy-nilly, Michael.
Right,
this was
right.
Carefully done. This was carefully thought out. The word meta, I'm sure, was unpacked, diagnosed. Okay, metaverse. So we want when people say metaverse, we want them to think of us. So meta. So we take piece of that. The logo, you can see, is it kind of an infinity thing? Is it, it's designed to be this otherworldly sort of connected signal and marker. This is very careful stuff that we analyze, Michael, with focus groups and quantitative surveys so that we have a good sense of what's going to work, what's going to resonate, and so on. The challenge here was that Facebook already had all of this negativity and all of this other stuff that when they came out with it, of course, the people who were already kind of not necessarily allies of Facebook jumped on the meme bandwagon, if you will, and made fun of it. But the reality of it is, this is a very careful and purposeful process that Facebook has undertaken, and probably likely to be effective with respect to creating a different way to talk about the company that doesn't bring up all of these old negative thoughts.
And some guy, some woman was out there sitting, I'm sure, on a whole host of meta addresses and gets that phone call, right? Like from the casino. Yes. Hey, Facebook wants your, somebody had it, right? Somebody had to have had rights to all this.
Absolutely. And they're having a very, very good month, Michael.
Yeah, that's the guy. That's the guy I want to be. I want that phone call.
Me too. And certainly, in terms of resources, Facebook has infinite resources, right? So whenever they run into issues, Michael, what do you do? We'll just buy Instagram, or we'll buy WhatsApp. We just create this massive company, this technological tech behemoth, and we just do whatever we want until somebody stops us.
Has the final question, has the Washington football team, has Dan Snyder called you yet to ask what the name should be of the former Redskins?
Yes, I have not been called by Mr. Schneider, but I will say I love what they did, because what essentially they did, Michael, was say, what can we come up with that just is so unassailable? It's just so vanilla. It's just so non-controversial. We will not get into any trouble. And the answer to that is the Washington football team.
Professor, that was awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate your time as well.